Luigi Mangione, the alleged murderer of Brian Thompson, the late CEO of US health insurer United Healthcare, well, you'd have to have taken an impromptu excursion to the Andromeda Galaxy if this particular story has passed you by. Now, to avoid any misunderstanding, when he claims I'm violating the law or YouTube rules glorifying or inciting violence, I don't support killing anyone. I know, bombshell, right? I think anyone who follows me already got that particular gist. So it's been interesting to see many of the people who are focused on this particular killing as a particularly obscene outrage are often the very same people who have actively advocated the industrial level slaughter of the Palestinian people for the last 14 months. An article in The Atlantic, whose editor incidentally is a former Israeli prison guard, is headlined "Decivilization may already be underway," with a subheading, "The brazen murder of a CEO in Midtown Manhattan and the cheering reaction to his execution amounts to a blinking and blaring warning signal for a society that has become already too inured to bloodshed." Well, as one Twitter user put it, surely it suggests more in the way of decivilization when the world's leading genocidaire can hardly get through a speech to Congress for all the standing ovations. That's referring to how Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is a wanted man for war crimes and crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, was loudly cheered and serenaded by US politicians when he addressed them after having exterminated tens of thousands of Palestinians. Indeed, if we're talking about decivilization, literally decivilized Gaza by wiping civilization out. If we're discussing killing machines, more to the point, that surely includes how the privatized US healthcare system, and as a socialist, it's systems I'm interested in rather than individuals, has condemned so many Americans to death and suffering. What 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Engels would have called social murder, which is what has clearly driven the response, which we're going to look at, to Luigi Mangione's violent act. Luigi Mangione, let's get the pronunciation right. A lot of discussion has focused on, well, people lusting after him. That's been helped along by, I think, admittedly pretty buff shirtless pictures, and the truly bizarre decision of the Pennsylvania police to keep releasing mugshots of him. That has clearly fueled that as well. Some of those comments veering into pornographic territory. Here's one example of this on TikTok.
My husband, which is Luigi Mangione, has been eating a lot of McDonald's lately, so I decided to celebrate his Italian heritage and make a pasta puttanesca. I simmered together some tomatoes, onions, spices, Kalamata olives, and then pureed and added some flaked tuna. I then served it with pasta, a little bit of grated Parmesan, and this was really satisfying and hit the spot just like my husband.
What I'm interested in, with my strokey chin writer hat on, is what could be called the Luigi Mangione phenomenon. He has become celebrated on social media in a way which almost never happens with killers. I mean, that's not surprising. Killers, not generally hero number one in society. This is certainly not like other killings. Not most killings, certainly. Previous statistics from the FBI showed most Americans who were killed by someone they know. They also showed 42% were killed during arguments. That's what happens, I'm afraid, if you've got lots of guns. People get angry, spur of the moment, they shoot each other in some cases. While another 23% were in circumstances such as rape, robbery, or burglary. So, not the same, clearly, as this particular circumstance. If we're going by what is officially defined as terrorism, the figures show it's far-right extremists who've committed by far the most ideologically motivated homicides compared to far-left or radical Islamist extremists. I'm using the term far-left as described in the official statistics, with 227 such attacks since the 90s compared to 42 attacks by those who are termed far-left. Now, this is not, it should be emphasised, a quote-unquote far-left attack. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that someone who does not have the, let's say, normal profile of a killer, how they become a killer. When that happens, that's interesting in of itself. When somebody just doesn't have the sort of history you would expect. And someone who is not actually a leftist in any meaningful sense at all, from what we can see from social media. He seems like the sort of guy on a dating app like Hinge to select moderate from the drop-down box. A sort of tech bro, I guess. He's someone whose friends have come out to laud him on a human level. One of them, Tracy Mowell, posted this clip of him.
This is an update. We found mochi ice cream. We found mochi ice cream. Mango baby.
She wrote alongside it, Luigi Mangione is probably the most Google keyword today. But before all of this, for a while, it was also the only name whose FaceTime calls I would pick up. He was one of my absolute best, closest, most trusted friends. He was also the only person who, at 1 a.m. on a work day, in this video, agreed to go to the store with drunk me to look for Mocky ice cream. Another friend posted a picture of them together with a caption, "He's not a monster. I can't put into words on how worried I am for you right now. They have this story all upside down." He seems to have been an athletic frat boy from a pretty gilded background who academically excelled and who was well liked, no prior evidence of violence, studied computer science at the University of Pennsylvania, who was into making computer games. What we do know is that, as the Daily Beast put it, he was laid off by a Californian car resale site in 2023 and dealt with debilitating back pain requiring surgery, that he was sometimes bedridden, which one friend said was heinous because of the giant screws needed. An x-ray of his back with those screws can be seen adorning his Twitter header, which was suspended for a little while. He's been reported to have been an active Reddit user, often posting in Reddit communities about spinal pain. Quite a key point, clearly. He said, according to, this is quoted in Forbes, "When my spondy went bad on me last year, 23 male, it was completely devastating as a young athletic person." The spondy, I had to Google that, refers to a bone in your spine. He also posted, "Keep trying different surgeons. Nobody will operate on my..." This is recommending to someone else, clearly. "Keep trying different surgeons. Nobody will operate on my back until I'm at least 40 is nonsense coming from a medical professional who lacks perspective. Tell them you are, quote unquote, unable to work / do your job. We live in a capitalist society." I found that the medical industry responds to these keywords far more urgently than you describing unbearable pain and how it's impacting your quality of life. Now, that is one of following is undeniable, including amongst his fellow inmates. And while I think it's fair to say we know a lot of convicts will get hassle in prison, I think it's clear it's not going to apply to this guy. Let's listen to this outside the prison on the US cable show News Nation. The US drag queen Aquaria tweets, "Hold up Joe Biden, I see what you've done for Hunter, and I think the American people would like to request one small final favour, please." Another tweets, "We finally have someone to replace all those Christopher Columbus statues with." Christopher Columbus, of course, being responsible for far more murders than Luigi Mangione. While right-wing commentators are outraged, the headline for Zoe Strimple's piece in The Telegraph speaks for itself. Luigi Mangione's disgusting Gen Z fan club makes me fear for our society's future. They really don't like young people at Telegraph. She has millions of salivating over the alleged assassin of Brian Thompson in a disgusting display of our society's disintegration. Perhaps the best example of the, let's say, differing approaches to outrage came from Fox News. Listen to this.
We'll dig into it later. The Instagram posts from nutbag people, which I was sent in the commercial break earlier, crazy. Like, he's cute, and people celebrating this. This is a sickness. Honestly, it's so disappointing, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And up next, the other big news out of New York, Daniel Penny. A lot of people think he's a hero, and tonight he's not guilty. My take next.
Daniel Penny there, of course, is the former Marine who was acquitted of fatally choking a homeless man on the New York City subway. The fact is, the US healthcare system, dominated by private healthcare insurers who exist to turn the most basic human needs into an excuse for profits. They kill people and they inflict terrible suffering. That system does. And it is the system, which is why this killing has, let's just say, struck a chord amongst a significant number of Americans. Let's read the leaked manifesto of Luigi Mangione, posted in full on the Substack of the top-notch US journalist Ken Klippenstein. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologise for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the number one most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the indecipherable largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy. No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is far more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal, Moore, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Well, I mean, he's clearly a very smart kid, isn't he? Not to sound patronising there. As a geriatric millennial to a significantly younger American. I mean, he's intelligent. He's got insight. 51% of Americans have a very or somewhat negative view of the healthcare industry, with 31% opting for very or somewhat positive, while 62% correctly believe all Americans getting healthcare is the responsibility of the federal government, with 36% disagreeing. And the failure of the US to have universal healthcare is, of course, a scandal. The bullets allegedly used, he's an alleged killer, by Luigi Mangione were reportedly described with deny, depose and defend, words well known by Americans associated with refusals to offer healthcare by health insurance companies. The US healthcare system is wasteful and inefficient, requiring a huge bureaucracy, money which could be better spent on, for example, providing decent healthcare. As the National Women's Law Centre put it back in May 2023, refusals to provide healthcare threaten the health and lives of patients nationwide. Back in 2020, it was revealed that as much as a quarter of the American population were delaying getting the medical help they needed because of surging costs, and that clearly kills Americans. A significant number of those will die prematurely because of that. Look at this TikTok of the parent of a terminally ill 4-year-old child, which fleshes out where I think some of the emotional response is coming from.
Just fall apart. Baby, we can make it if we're heart to heart. And we can build this dream together, standing strong forever. Nothing's gonna stop us now.
The fact is that mass murder is baked into capitalist societies in different ways, which can be seen in particularly stark terms in the more unrestrained capitalism of the United States. We've discussed the mass killing of people abroad, facilitated by politicians, legitimised by media outlets, and the mass killing of people at home by depriving them of their most basic and fundamental needs because profit is seen as a higher priority than people's lives and their well-being. And of course, healthcare is at the heart of that. Now, the left believes in mass movements which use collective power to transform societies, rather than lopping off rich individuals at the top. It is objectively true that this killing has certainly raised the tension about the horrors of the US healthcare system. Whether it now ends up as a net saver of lives because of that, well, that remains to be seen. It is true that in our profoundly unequal and broken societies, if we fail to address the catastrophic distribution of wealth and power and rights, with collective movements which secure wins, then I think this sort of violence will become more common. I want to hear your thoughts on this one. I'd be fascinated to read them, actually, to be honest. So I will read every single comment in response. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts. Help us keep the show on the road at patreon.com/OwenJones84. I should tell you, finally, a massive project which I've been working on, which is about the BBC and its coverage of the genocide in Palestine, which is based on interviews with multiple BBC journalists, is finally being published next week. I will give you more information about that. Cost £20,000 to legal. Interesting. Anyway, so yes, your support as ever for all that I'm able to do is hugely appreciated. Press like, subscribe, listen to the podcast, patreon.com/4. I will speak to you soon.